This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. This is Anuradha. I'm from Blackbuck Engineers Private Limited. In partnership with Zinca, we are organizing this session. Uh, there will be continuous sessions this month and next month, most of you being students. I'm sure you'll be able to take a lot of benefit from experts who come from different areas of expertise. Some of them are HRs and some of them are CEOs. So you will be able to really take benefit from industry expertise, and in fact, you will be having more benefit than really having them in the college, because you're all from different districts and it's very difficult for experts to travel to these places, and this is an opportunity that you can use to have an illustrious career. Most of them will be really experts, and today's expert is Mr. Praveen Nagmalla. Praveen Nagmalla is uh, so he's an MBA and from prestigious business school, and he has started his own organization. He's an entrepreneur for some time, and then he has taken up roles like CEO with Indus Fresh in SR Group. So it is our real opportunity to listen from him, because he is a bundle of experiences. He has run big organizations. So, and I personally attended this session, Strategy for Self, from him, and it was really life changing for me too. So I urge you to carefully listen what he's saying, and whenever you have some questions, do not mute off unless Praveen mentions. Do not mute off, please. Uh, Type in your chat window. We will ask the questions to the speaker. Whenever he asks for questions, we'll ask the questions. So do keep yourself muted all the time, and if you have any questions or any difficulty, please type it in the comments box. Okay, so happy learning to all of you. Please pass the message to all your friends to make the best benefit of this. Thank you. Over to you, Praveen.
Yeah, 1 second. Give me a second. I'm just trying to switch on my video. All right. First of all, thank you so much, Anuradha, for the intro. And good morning to everybody. I am very glad to see the count of the number of participants here. I mean, thank you so much for taking out your time, and I'm sure you'll find this session useful. It also shows that you are all of you are very eager to learn and also taking this opportunity of lockdown. That's very important. I understand that it's not voluntary. Sorry, it's not compulsory, but it is voluntary for you all. So that shows that you guys are the ones who would like to take opportunity of this calamity. And that's how exactly people with positive outlook towards life and optimistic people look at things. They find opportunities in every calamity. On the other hand, pessimists manage to find calamities in every opportunity. So while this lockdown and the reasons for the lockdown are not very pleasant, I'm sure we'll all be able to manage to take out some positives and take out some opportunities from this unpleasant phase. So this is a good beginning for all of you, and thanks to Anuradha, she will provide a lot of avenues for you to learn and apply in your careers and make the best use of this lockdown situation. So this session which you're going to hear is usually the one I take for corporates and executive MBAs, but the applicability of this session is universal. So it can be applied by school students, it can be applied by graduates, it can be applied by executives. In fact, even I try and apply continuously the principles which I'm going to share with you. I'll now turn off my video and share the screen with you, share the presentation screen with you. There'll be, ideally this should have been a physical one-to-one session or in a classroom session, because there'll be a lot of interactivity. Having said that, we'll try to make the best use of this format also. So if you guys can be ready with some pen and paper, etc., it will be helpful. You don't have to share the assignments with us, but some activities we'll try and do. Okay, or at least an Excel sheet will be fine. I'm sharing the screen now. Anuradha, you're listening to this, right? This is the first time I'm using GoTo. I usually use Zoom or Skype. So if there are any technical glitches, please take care of them.
Sure, I'll let you know, Praveen.
And how do I minimize the windows which are appearing on the right side? Because this, are you guys? Can
We
you
are
see the?
we are
Can you see the
seeing just
screen
the
in full?
presentation. Praveen, we
All
are
right.
seeing just the presentation, so you can go ahead.
All right. That's good. So the title of this presentation, it says strategy for self. So one might wonder, why do we need a strategy for self? The point is, most of you guys are going to, after your education is completed, or even during your education, okay, you guys are having some goals for yourself, some vision. You may or may not be, but some of you must be having. And you guys will be probably getting into leadership roles where you need to apply strategies for the businesses you are managing. In that context, it actually helps if you have some strategy for yourself. So if we don't have strategy for ourselves, how do we expect to manage strategies for other businesses, right? So from that point of view, this session is very important. And I'm not saying this will be a life-changing experience. For some people, it may be who resonate this presentation, but you will find some of the frameworks which you are going to see probably useful, and this might increase the chances of your success. There's nothing guaranteed in life, but this might increase the chance of success. So like I said, some of you might be having goals and visions, and probably after this session, some of you may find some frameworks and tools to identify your goals. So this session will provide some simple frameworks for you to realize your life's vision and goals. That would be the purpose of this session. So during this session and after this session, you will be able to probably get some clarity on how to choose the right professional or a business career. Okay, that would be the first thing we'll try and attempt. People who already have made this choice, probably this will provide a framework to validate and reinforce your choice. The second aspect we'll try to address is what actually means a successful career. There are so many definitions of this. There's so many gurus which who during various talks they give a lot of gyan on this. But let's try and understand what actually means a successful career. And once we choose the right professional career and once we have an understanding of what success means, we'll try and look at some basic tools how to be effective and excel in the chosen career. So if we can get some clarity on all these three aspects, we'll be doing justice to this session. The starting point for everybody, okay, is the right pursuit, as in making the right choice, whether it is a career path or a business option, business opportunity. It is extremely important to pursue it right. When I say pursuit, it means your aspiration. What do you set out to achieve, right? Lot of a lot of times the pursuit is not right. We either try to do because others are doing or because others are saying, right? So I would say a few things right in the beginning, and this might find little some of you might find this very contradictory. Especially I understand that there are some professors also, so no offense to anybody. So the first thing I'd like to say is don't listen to professors, don't listen to parents, and don't listen to friends when it comes to your career choice. Your career is your responsibility, so you'll have to make the choice. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't hear anybody. Hear them out, okay, try to understand what they're saying, but you have to make your choices. Evaluate all the suggestions which come your way, okay, whether it comes from parents or siblings or your friends, your family, your professors. The reason why I'm saying is because, in fact, this includes me also. If I give any specific career advice, okay, you don't have to follow it, you'll have to evaluate it. And there's a simple reason for this, because neither your parents nor your professors nor your teachers nor your friends are actually capable of knowing the entire possibilities in this world. Human potential is immense. The same human mind um, has created the seven wonders of the world, right? So from that perspective, it is a little risky to actually listen to any particular advice without evaluating. Having said that, the question arises, are we in a position to somebody has to mute their audio, please.
Shalini Ragula, can you please mute? Shalini Ragula, can you please mute?
जी जी वो मैं बता रही सर आप
Shalini,
अरे ना सर IFRS transaction आपका
Shalini Ragula. Shalini, can you please mute?
All right, I think she has left. Maybe she couldn't mute it, no problem. Yeah, so I was saying that while it's easy to say that you'll have to make your own career choices, you'll have to evaluate all the options which come in your way. The question arises, do we have that expertise? Do we have that sort of talent in us? So this first part of the session talks about that. I'll try to provide a very, very simple mechanism for you all to make some choices in your life. Okay. So I'll take a 1-minute break here and I want all of you to do a quick activity. just for yourself. You don't have to state it to anybody. It's important that you all participate in these simple activities, because this session is about you, purely about you. It's not any evaluation, not any assignment. It's totally about you and your career, right? So the activity I want you guys to do is uh, basically list down what you think. There are three things, okay? The first thing is list down what you think are good at, or you can become good at. I'll repeat. The first thing, list down one or two items or one or two things, maybe three, such things where you are good at, or you can be extremely become good at. You may not be good, perfect at this stage, but you are confident that you can become extremely good at. Okay. For example, if in my case, it could be business management or teaching business. I manage businesses and I teach business strategy in for executive MBA. So that could be an example. Second thing is what you are passionate about. Okay, it could be any of your hobbies, or it could be some of your interest areas. If you don't have passion, at least mention things which gives you joy while doing. So I'll take a pause of half a minute here. Just make a list of these two things: what you're good at or can become good at, and the things which give you joy, or what you're passionate about. If you don't want to make a list, if you don't have pen and paper handy, no problem. You can just make a mental note of those things. Anuradha, while they're making a list of these things, am I perfectly audible? So, all right, let's continue with the session. So when it comes to, like I said, one has to make their own choices, but we may not be having the framework, right framework, or expertise to do that. So what I'm going to share with you is a very, very simple fundamental tool which will enable you to make your choices. So the first thing is, we got to be clear on what we are good at, or what we can become good at eventually. We don't have to worry if we are not currently good in that area, because becoming good and becoming great is a continuous process. It will continue till probably will till we die. So, but it's important to have clarity on what we are really good at or can become very good at. So this is the first aspect. Let's call it expertise. Second thing is what gives us joy, or what we are passionate about. Okay, if we don't have a passion, nothing to worry. A lot of people say, follow your passion, etc., etc. But I come from the view that not everybody is gifted with passion. So there is absolutely no worry if there is no passion existing. But figure out what gives you joy, at least, right? And third aspect is also very important. What is the value creation? Certain things might give joy, and certain things you might be good at. But if they don't create any value at the end of the day, there's not much use of it. So value can be anything, but we are not in charity business. So by and large, when I say value creation, it means what is the economic return, financial return, or financial wealth we can create uh, uh, through these things, right? So basically, yeah. So basically, the point is this: the intersection of expertise, joy, and value creation. This is where the right career choice lies. Okay. So whatever we do, we need to have expertise, and that should give us joy, and that should create some value for ourselves, to the society, to the company we are working at, etc., etc. Right? So let's look at some scenarios. What will happen if these things are disjoint? Okay, let's look at scenario number 1. There is no expertise. There's not much of joy we are deriving. And we are creating hardly any value. So this is the worst scenario to be in. If the things which we are doing, we don't have any expertise, we are not good at it, and this hardly gives joy, and there is a very minimal value creation. So this is where a majority of people in the world fall. Okay, they are the regular employees or regular workers, etc. They will have some life, but there will always be a struggle. Probably they will end up being in middle class, lower strata of the society. They will not have any expertise or mastering anything, so they will end up being mediocres and typically losers. So this is a very unpleasant situation to be in. Let's look at another scenario. There's a lot of expertise, there's a lot of joy also. You are good at something, and that what you are good at will also give you joy. You will enjoy doing what that is. But if there is no value creation, okay, you got to question that, because end of the day, if there is no value creation, if there is no economic return, you cannot sustain your life, you cannot sustain your organization. So this cannot be career options. You can actually have these as hobbies. Let's say, for example, fishing. Okay, you are extremely good at fishing. It gives you immense happiness and you are deriving a lot of joy, but you're not able to create any value out of it. I'm not saying you cannot, but in the current context or in that situation, if you are unable to create any value, then it's better to keep that as a hobby, not a career choice. So a lot of people get confused between hobbies and career choices. There's no harm in converting your hobbies into career choices, but you need to take care of this part. If there's no value creation, then sustenance will be a problem. You better keep them as hobbies. Let's look at another situation. Okay, there is expertise, there's a lot of value creation also, but that is not giving us joy. Okay, so basically this would be called rat race. A lot of people, a lot of professionals, they are pretty good at what they are. I mean, like, I've seen a lot of investment bankers, a lot of IT professionals falling in this category. They're pretty good at coding, and they also creating decent value for themselves and for the companies, etc. But they're not enjoying it because their heart doesn't lie there. So this typically leads to, sorry, this typically leads to burnout, because when you don't enjoy what you are doing, it will start eating you from within. Let's look at another scenario. There is a lot of joy, okay, and you're also creating a lot of value, but you are not good at it. So which only says that you are just lucky, and maybe the luck doesn't may not last for too long. So if you are in this case, by luck, by chance, you got into some job or some business where you are actually enjoying it, you are also creating a lot of value, but you don't have expertise in it. So what will happen? You will do well as long as your luck lasts, but if there is a better competitor, okay, you will lose your sustenance. So this situation is also not very good. If somebody is in this situation, what you need to quickly do is increase this expertise, build your skills, and bring this circle into to overlap these two circles. Otherwise, there'll be no sustainability, right? Let's take a look at how these circles overlap for successful people. Okay. Somebody has to mute again. Yeah, thank you. So by now you must have understood, this is such a simple framework. So by now you must have understood how these circles will overlap for successful people. Yes. Okay. So it might look something like this. There'll be a nice, handsome overlap between expertise, joy or passion, value creation, and economic return. You see the overlap, it's very healthy. So the higher the overlap, the higher would be the chances of success. And if you look at most successful people, okay, the likes of celebrities, actors, Virat Kohli, etc., etc., you can imagine how much the overlap will be, right? So it will be something like this. So let's talk about Virat Kohli, because all of you know this person and you also relate to his skills. So expertise, this immense expertise he has got, and he works very hard to build the expertise, and he's very passionate about what he's good at. That is very evident in all the matches we see, and he's also creating a lot of value for himself, of course, and also for the entire game of cricket, right? So this is how the circles overlap for most successful people. So what do we do as individuals? We can start with a minimal overlap, but we need to consciously and continuously put effort to maximize the overlap between these three aspects, which is expertise, joy, and value creation. So basically, to sum up the first part of this session, the pursuit of career or business should be a nice intersection or overlap between expertise, joy, if not passion. Ideally, if you're passionate about what you're doing, it's good, but at least if you can derive some joy out of it, it will serve the purpose and generate some economic return or value creation. If not in the short run, at least in the long run. So that is the end of the first part of this session. Either we can have some questions now, or we can have questions at the end of this entire session. There'll be 5 parts to this, and probably will take about an hour to complete all of them. So Anuradha, or if any moderator is there, you can advise whether we should have Q&A right now after each session or after the entire presentation.
So we can give a minute for people to type their questions in the comment section.
Yeah,
Praveen,
and people who, fair enough. And people who don't have questions, just reflect on what I said. I asked you to make a list of the things which you are good at, where your expertise lies, and what gives you joy. Now you have seen this session, so reflect for yourself whether there is an overlap or not. If there's no overlap, then maybe later you can have a game plan for yourself how to create the overlap, right? So for example, let me again go back to that fishing example. I'm taking the fishing example because it is very extreme. It on the face of it looks like it cannot be a career option, but if you're really good at fishing and you don't like to do anything at all, probably you can actually generate some value or economic return by writing some blogs about it, having a website about it, or opening some fishing courses, etc. So I'll take a pause here. So if there are any questions, we'll attend, and otherwise we can continue to the next part. The next part is about what success is all about.
before we move on to the next part, I request all the people who are attending this session to be on mute. Sai, Chaitanya, Mutyala, don't need to call up everyone, right? Please put all yourself in mute. Why is it difficult? Everyone has to put on mute. Everyone, please put on mute. Everyone put on mute, please. Okay, thanks. The end of the first part of the 5 parts, Praveen. So expertise, enjoyable, value creation. So yeah, I'm attributing it to myself. So what am I expert at and what I'm enjoying, and can I make money out of it? These are the 3 questions you have to ask whenever you pursue something. Thank you so much, Praveen. So we'll move on to the next part.
So, there are a lot of debates about this question, right? Most of us, I think there are as many definitions of success as many authors there are, or as many books there are. So I have been thinking about this for quite some time in my career, and while everyone has to figure out what success means, I'll probably give some, you know, what do you say, some pointers. If that makes sense, probably you can uh, define for yourself what success means and what a dream job or an ideal job means, right? So basically, one thing I can say with certainty for sure is money definitely is not a yardstick or not a measure for success, because there is no end to it. How much ever money we earn, there's always somebody else earning a lot more than us. Similarly, a position may not always be a measure of success, because like we have seen in the previous slides, you might actually be in a great position, but that might not give you joy, right? So what is success all about? Let's try and look at some aspects of this, some perspectives. And I keep saying, you don't have to have a passion. If you are lucky if you have a passion. I think I have found my passion a couple of years ago. But if you don't have a passion, I understand most of you guys are in graduate courses. So you must be wondering, or you must be hearing a lot of people saying follow your passion. I think since the time Steve Jobs said it first, it has become very fashionable to say we'll have to follow our passion. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a we don't have a on and off button. We don't have switch on and switch off button that we switch it on and the passion comes up. So the point is, if you don't have passion, absolutely nothing to worry, right? Passion need not be the starting point. Okay, so if you do certain things in a particular way, maybe you'll become passionate about what you're doing, or at least you'll start enjoying what you're doing. That's all what matters. So if anybody doesn't have a passion, or if anybody is criticizing you that you don't have a passion, or if you're not you're not having any obsession, you don't have to worry about it at all. Okay, let's take a look at what success means then, right? So this is my perspective from my personal experience, and also from various books and probably some films which I've watched. I have figured out that probably these could be the elements of success. The first thing is competence. Okay, if you are competent, and if you are good at, and if you feel good at what you're doing, about what you're doing, um, you can say it is a starting point. If there is no competence, there is no question of success. Second thing is very important: freedom or autonomy. Okay, if one is very successful, they'll have a fair amount of freedom on their life and on their work environment and control. Third thing is relatedness, meaning you like the people you work with, or you manage to build a team of people around you who you can relate to. Because if you most of us will spend 75-80% of our time for work or business. So it is important to have people who you like around you, otherwise it'll get very, very frustrating. And a lot of, again, professionals, IT professionals in particular, I see that they face this problem. There's so many people in their offices, but they don't relate to most of them. And the last thing is, you'll have to add continuously value to yourself and to your organization, and if you're lucky, probably to the country, to the society at large. So there might be more perspectives, but I believe these four perspectives, or these four aspects, will actually sum up what a successful career means, right? You got to have competence, and you need to have absolute a lot of freedom in what you're doing. You should be able to do what you believe in rather than what others ask you to do. You should be able to relate to people around you, and you should be able to create a lot of value. So if we can manage these four things, I think you'll be very happy and successful in your career. And end of the day, one definition which is universal is a successful career leads to happiness. So if you probably achieve these four things, and the chances of being happy about your career would be higher. I believe some of the audience today are also into jobs and already working, okay, maybe as a part-time or full-time. So maybe you can evaluate your jobs on these four parameters. Then you'll be able to relate to what I'm saying. On a scale of 1 to 10, maybe you can rate all of these four aspects. Okay, where do you lie on a scale of 1 to 10? Where is your competence? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much of freedom you get in at your job or at your business? How related you feel to the people around you, and how much of value addition you are doing. So if the scores are high, in all likelihood you'll be happy about your career. So you don't have to worry about what others say. If you can evaluate for yourself, that'll give you a lot of clarity. But the question is how to achieve these four things. Okay, so the first thing is, like we discussed in the first part, the right pursuit is extremely important. So it's always better to start right. If you have if you start right, then like they say, a good beginning is half done, right? Since most of you guys will get into choosing your or making your career options very soon, be sure or try to take maximum try to put maximum effort in getting your pursuit right. Once you do that, build sharp focus and be obsessed about it. This is extremely important. What it means is basically, let's say you have set a goal for yourself, okay, what you need to pursue, a 5-year goal or 10-year goal. So once you set that, whatever you do from that day should be in the direction of that goal. May not be exactly in the same direction, but at least it has to move towards that. It can be like this, but always moving forward, right? uh, got to avoid deviations and distractions while you're pursuing. So therefore sharp focus is required. Okay, when I say focus, uh, actually I mean you got to get obsessed about it. Let's say if somebody wants to become a professor, okay, that is your pursuit because you believe that will give you happiness. Then from the day you decide, okay, you need to build your skills with sharp focus to uh, cultivate all the skills and expertise which are required for a professor. That could be reading a lot, that could be doing research, that could be interacting with people, that could be building your communication skills, so on and so forth. The third thing is deliberate practice. Now here the operative word is deliberate. Everybody knows practice makes man perfect or a woman perfect, right? But it is very time consuming. So deliberate practice means putting conscious effort to practice faster. I'll explain a little bit. But if practice makes man perfect, practice makes man perfect much faster. Deliberate means by design, not by default. So what is the difference between practice and deliberate practice? Let's say again, let's get back to the same example of somebody wants to build communication skills, right? So a normal practice would mean probably reading a newspaper or interacting with people whenever you get a chance, and listening to news, etc., etc. But whenever you get a chance, there is no conscious effort. When I say deliberate practice, you will actually have a routine. You have a solid plan to do these things at a much higher level with obsession, which means whenever you get free time or you take out time actually to build your skills. So you watch only English news deliberately, and while watching, you will concentrate on the pronunciation, on the vocabulary. You will watch only English movies. As per this example, I'm not saying that everybody should watch only English movies, but if you are keen on building your articulation skills and communication skills in English, and if you do it deliberately, you will do it with obsession. So when you watch movies, you do it with obsession, with subtitles, with headphones, so that you'll not miss a single nuance of communication. Okay, and you will grab all the opportunities to speak in public. You will grab opportunities to, communicate to people. And after that, you will reflect on how your communication went and you'll improvise. So this is the difference between practice and deliberate practice. So practice means practice when you get chance. Deliberate practice means creating opportunities and chances for yourself. So if I repeat, if practice makes man perfect, deliberate practice makes man perfect faster, right? So if you do this, right pursuit, if you have sharp focus, and if you try to practice deliberately, then you'll build something called career capital. Some of you who are in commerce fields know what capital means in finance. So there's something called career capital also, which is nothing but a set of valuable skills and achieving mastery and expertise in what you're pursuing, and creating some differentiators for yourself, so that you can be always good and make your skills and expertise sustainable. So if you build this career capital, you'll become so good that they cannot ignore you. And who are they here? If you are in business, the customers cannot ignore you, the investors cannot ignore you, partners cannot ignore you. If you are in a job, your bosses cannot ignore you. You will grow much faster than anybody else. If you are in college, your professors, your peers cannot ignore you. You will shine in college. So build your career capital so that you can become so good that nobody can ignore you. And by doing this, you will achieve those four things which we spoke about, which is competence, autonomy, relatedness, and you'll also create a lot of value. So that is the second part of this presentation. Anuradha, I'll continue. Let's take the questions at the end in the interest of time.
Sure, Praveen.
Unless if somebody is posting messages, we can take a break. We don't have to have a rigid template. You let me know. So let's look at another simple framework. So we have understood how to choose the right pursuit, and we have got a fair idea of what success means. It's not about what others say. And now we'll look at some very fundamental tools on how we should what are the frameworks which will help us to become very effective in what we are doing, right? Now, this quadrant 2 life, I'm sure some of you are familiar with this phrase. It is from a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Why? The book is very boring. I mean, it's very difficult to read. I'm sure most of you guys have started and put it aside. But I picked up one aspect of it, I think, which sums up the entire philosophy of the book, right? It's called Quadrant 2 Life. And this has very, very high implications in our life. So pay attention to this. I'll explain what Quadrant 2 Life is. But one thing I can say without any doubts and with absolute certainty is there's no exception. The most important habit of all the effective people I have come across is that they spend a lot of time in this quadrant 2, right? Let's see what it means. So at this stage, I want you to do another small activity, just 1 minute. Again, you can do it in a paper, you can put it in your Excel sheet, or you can make a mental notes of it. So list down all the activities, what you do in a day. It can be very mundane and simple activities like, brushing teeth or sleeping or eating, etc., etc. But list down all the activities which you do in a typical day. It could be reading, it could be watching, etc. I'll just take half a minute or 1 minute. All right. So basically, as per this framework, activities can be divided into 4 quadrants, and these 4 quadrants are split against 2 axes. The vertical axis would be important, so activities can be important, which has significant important in our lives, or not important, which do not have very significant impact in our lives. And on the horizontal axis, the urgency of the activities. They can be very urgent, which means there'll be time pressure. You need to complete or attend to this particular activity within the time. It could be like going to the college, taking exams, or taking somebody's calls, attending to nature's calls, etc., etc. Right? And may not be urgent, so there is no time pressure. So broadly, activities will fall under these quadrants, either important and urgent. These activities usually get done, like you got a call from your professor or from your boss. You don't have a choice, so this activity will get done. You don't have to worry about it, or you need to have your breakfast, etc. This is quadrant 2. So this is the quadrant I'm talking about. Okay, these activities will be defining your life, so make them your priority. I'll get back to this quadrant later. Let's look at the other quadrants quickly. Now quadrant 3, these are deceptive activities. They are very urgent, okay, but they're not important. They look important, but they're not important. For example, suddenly your friend called for gossip, okay, or some nowadays social media can be quite a distracting thing. So some message popped up in Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp or Twitter, okay, and you break your routine and take a look at that. So these are urgent things because the event has already occurred, but these are not important things. So these are deceptive activities which look important. You'll have to be a little careful about these things. In the fourth quadrant, I'll be very blunt about this. This is for losers, time wasting activities. This is not important and not urgent. So typically, watching the same India-Pakistan match some 100th time, or just watching the same movie some 100th time, this could be some or gossiping or just whiling away time. These could be time wasting activities. So if your activities are falling in this quadrant, I would recommend that you try to move into other quadrants. But remember one thing, same activities can be quadrant 2 activities for some people and quadrant 4 activities for some people, or quadrant 3 activities for some people. So let's talk about watching movies. So for a person who is pursuing film direction, movie direction as a career, so watching movies 100 times or more than that might be a quadrant 2 activity, because that will add value to him, that is important to him. But for a person who is not pursuing such career, watching movie only to kill time, it will become a time wasting activity. So you'll have to be clear on what activities are adding value to you. So basically, this framework suggests you maximize things which are important in your life, okay, and which are not seemingly urgent. For example, reading books. Okay, it is very important in life, but it is not urgent. If you don't read a book today, nothing is going to happen. You're not going to lose your job, right? Having said that, we got to make time for these activities so that I'm taking a pause. Somebody has to unmute. Sorry, mute. Okay, so
Praveen, you can continue. Every time somebody speaks, Ram has control and he will mute them.
thank you so much. So basically, what I'm saying is we got to figure out way to spend maximum time in quadrant 2. I was talking about an example of reading. Similarly, good movies, right, which are extremely knowledgeable. Movies teach us a lot. So if you can take out time for good movies or good documentaries, those are not urgent, but they will add value to you because you'll learn a lot from them, and that learning can be applied in your careers and in businesses, etc. So you got to figure out. So beginning of the session, I asked you to list down the activities which you do in your day. And now after this session, maybe we'll share a file of this session, or maybe you can note this simple framework you can note down. You actually categorize all your activities in all these quadrants, and see for yourself where you're spending most of the time in your day. If you're spending more time here, then you are on the right path. If you're spending more time on this here, you don't have much of a choice, but you'll have to figure out a way to take out time for this. If you're spending more time here, then you'll have to question what you can do about it and avoid spending time in this. Now the beauty about this is, if you spend more time here, okay, like for reading and learning and setting some frameworks for yourself, strategies, etc., this thing will become very easy because you'll become a master at what you're doing, right? So what all these urgent things will not consume too much time. You'll have enough and more time to spend in quadrant 2. The irony of life is the most successful people or the busiest people in this world, they have maximum time in their lives, in their day-to-day lives. Only people who cannot manage their time, who spend most time in quadrant 1, 3, 4, etc., they will keep cribbing that they don't have time, they're very busy, etc. This also reflects in the fact that all of us have 24 hours, but some people do a lot more in 24 hours than some other people, right? That's because they spend a lot of time in quadrant 2. I've listed down some activities for you. Okay. Oh, sorry. So basically, like I said, minimize this quadrant, avoid this, and spend maximum time here. So I have listed down some activities for you. Okay. You'll have to create your own activities because this is a function of what you want to pursue, right? So when I said in the previous slide, when I said sharp focus and deliberate practice, okay, this is what I mean. You need to spend a lot of time in this quadrant too. So there are some activities I've listed here. These are the activities which are quadrant 2 activities for me. So you guys have to make a list of your own quadrant 2 activities and maximize spending time on those things. This is important because in life, what matters most matters most. So you got to spend time on those things which matter most. Don't spend time on things which do not matter most. That will that will differentiate us from not so effective people. So remember this line: what matters most matters most, and spend more time in quadrant 2. Okay, that's the end of part 3. Now let's look at another interesting framework. This is my personal favorite, and you will not, like I said at the beginning of this session, this entire session is from my personal experiences, my professional experiences, and also from some of the greatest books I've read. So some of the things you might find in books and some of the things you may not, right? So this one you'll not find in any book. This is my own principle of philosophy. And if it resonates with you, probably you can apply it in your lives also. So this is about choosing between CTC versus TVC. Let's try to understand what these abbreviations, what these acronyms are. Now, people with work experience or even people who are in accounting or finance, they are familiar with this term CTC. It simply means cost to the company. Okay, which includes salary, perks, allowances, fringe benefits. Why this framework is important is because some of you are already working, but some of you will be getting into your jobs very soon. So it's very important to appreciate the difference between CTC and TVC so that you will focus on what matters. You will not focus on things which really do not matter in the long run, right? If you're not understanding what is TVC, don't worry, you will understand what it means very soon. So TVC includes all of this CTC. Okay, obviously you need salary, right? So to survive, and when you're working, you need to get what you deserve. So TVC includes CTC, but a lot more than CTC also. It includes a lot of intangible benefits like learning, okay, like exposure, the knowledge, the relevant experience, and the network you will build while working in a particular company or in a business, the newer opportunities you will come across, okay, the newer skills and the overall value addition. So if you have this perspective and not just focus about salary, right, then you'll do a lot of good for yourself. Let me take an example of the Flipkart founders, the Bansals, Benny Bansal and Sachin Bansal. And most of you must be aware that they were working in Amazon before starting their own venture. Now you can think for yourself whether they were focusing on CTC or TVC, because their dream was always to set up an e-commerce company in India. And obviously they would have focused less on this and more on these things, right? Intangible benefits, exposure, knowledge, how economics and how supply chains work in e-commerce business. They have focused on getting relevant experience. They have focused on networking, and they would have focused on newer opportunities, spotting newer opportunities, etc. So that is the difference between CTC and TVC. Now, if you're CTC focused, in the short term, you must be getting some good salary, etc., etc. But if you're TVC focused, you will get a lot more in the long run. What is TVC after all? It means simply total value from the company. It doesn't mean television commercial. It means total value from the company. So focus on TVC and not CTC. That is the point. If you focus on CTC, maybe your salary will increase like this linear, right? Like the blue line you're seeing. It will increase for sure, because assuming that we are all good in what we do and we have basic competencies, and also due to the inflation, etc., etc., the salaries will increase. But if we are TVC focused, we might start little lower, okay? But in the long run, our growth will be exponential. So when I said in the previous session, sharp focus, this is also includes a part of that sharp focus. If somebody wants to, let's say, set up a e-commerce company, okay, or somebody wants to pursue a career in advertising or marketing, so even if salary is less, join the companies which are good in marketing, right? Don't join the companies which pay salary more but they don't do much of marketing, right? So that is the difference between CTC approach and TVC approach. But when you start your career, because career is long, life is long, so you don't have to worry about initial salaries, etc., that much, if they're not adding value to you, okay? It for some lucky people, TVC and CTC might match, but if that is not your case, don't worry about TVC CTC so much initially and focus on TVC. All right, so that takes us to the last part of this session. This is again, you'll not find in any book, but this is very, very fundamental in nature. Try to understand and assimilate, as in digest this concept very well. It will do a lot of good for you in your future. It will make you a better person. This is a code. It looks like a code, but I'll tell you what it is. It is very simple framework. It is called the NIJ trick, which is a prerequisite, which means a basic requirement to, of course, innovation and also a lot of things in life. Let's try and understand what it is. So N stands for anything new. Okay, it could be new ideas, new opportunities, new products, new people, new cultures, and new faiths. Now, most of us, what we do when we come across something new or a new person or a new idea, we hurriedly, in haste, we judge, right? We take this route. Okay, without exploring much, we judge. And most of us, including me sometimes, most of us do this because we are wired like that. We are made like that. These are human psychology. So we judge other faiths, we judge other country people, we judge other cultures. So many times we hear things like, this particular religion is bad, this particular religion is good, etc., etc. So that is a very wrong approach. Okay, as a result, what happens is we kill without proper evaluation, without giving a proper chance to a particular idea. We kill the idea, or we kill the concept. Okay, or we either we kill, or we applaud, or we criticize, or we agree, right? But without proper due diligence, without proper homework. This is the cause for lot of problems in life. Okay, and also when it comes to businesses and startups, this is the problem for companies not growing or companies not innovating. For innovation, what is required is this approach. Okay, when you come across anything new, okay, spend a lot of time exploring, give considerable time to think about it, discuss it with friends, a lot of friends, discuss with people, colleagues, etc. Explore. And if it is not too expensive to experiment, do experimentation, do prototypes, gather maximum information, try it out. Okay, take a deep dive, and then you can take your decision. So the approach recommended is NIJ and not J. Those of you who have plans to start your own businesses, okay, those of you who want to become entrepreneurs, this NIJ framework is a must. Otherwise, you will be missing out on so many opportunities which come your way. Right? So the approach recommended is NIJ and not NJ. I hope you're all clear on it. I'll just quickly sum up what NIJ approach means. So like I said, typical human reaction to new ideas or anything new is instant resistance. Okay. I mean, nothing to worry about it, as long as you, from today onwards, from tomorrow onwards, you change the approach, because we are made like that. Good ideas may get killed by that route. This happens typically because of our lack of exposure, our fear of the unknown, and because we're operating in a particular comfort zone, or because of our own preset notions or prejudices, right? Yeah. So one second, I think I'm muted. Yeah, unmuted. So the point is, avoid judging things in a hurry, right? The approach recommended is NIJ. When we come across anything new, explore, evaluate, prototype, discuss, and then make the judgment, not in a hurry, right? Eventually, we may still kill the idea, but would at least not run the risk of killing good ideas. Now, one important thing is this NIJ is applicable both ways. It is applicable when people give ideas, you should not kill them right away. Okay, follow the NIJ approach. And when you get ideas, okay, don't judge it yourself. Give it a fair chance. Some people are very extrovert, and some people are very introvert. So introverts probably the reason, one of the reasons why they actually are introverts is because they judge their own ideas and they are a little shy what others think, etc. So this NIJ can be inward out and outward in both. So next time when you get any idea, don't judge it, don't allow others to judge. In fact, you can actually, if you are doing a group discussion or if you're having a brainstorming session, you can start the session requesting everybody to take the NIJ route and not the NJ route, so that everybody is receptive to ideas. All right. So this framework works for various aspects in life, many facets in life. It works for newer opportunities. It works for cultures, faiths, new people, and virtually with everything new. So this is the last slide of the session. Let's quickly sum up. So for a successful career, what we are saying is, first, choose the right path. Increase the overlap between expertise and what gives joy and what gives you economic return or monetary return. In other words, value creation. Then you focus on building your career capital and attain competence, autonomy, freedom, and build a team of people who you can relate to around you. Third thing, spend maximum time in quadrant 2 life. This has to start immediately from today if you guys really want to make the best out of your lives. Spend more time in quadrant 2, focus on what matters most, spend more time on focusing on important things, may not be so urgent. Maximize the total value from the company, or in your context, total value from the college. Okay, instead of focusing on immediate costs or immediate perks. Fifth one, adopt NIJ technique and totally avoid judging things, judging people, judging friends, judging ideas. Try to avoid judging things. Seek information, explore, experiment, and then come to probably some opinions and judging things. So that's the last slide of this session. I have kept 2 small assignments for yourself. You don't have to share it with me, but you do it for sure for yourself. If you do it for yourself, you'll gain a lot from this session. And probably you can discuss with your friends and your professors or your colleagues, your mentors, etc. if you have. So one simple activity is plot your areas of expertise, joy, and possibility, and see and possibility of getting economic return, and see how much is the overlap, and have some action plan to increase the overlap in future. Second thing is plot your daily activities into 4 quadrants and see how many activities fall in each of these quadrants and how you would want to maximize your activities in quadrant 2. So that's the end of this session. So Anuradha, over to you. I think we have completed exactly in time. 1 hour is allocated time for this. So you can take
Thank
over.
you so much. Thank you so much, Praveen. So students, try to do this assignment for yourself, for your own benefit. Really good. I have implemented in my own career and both in for career and personal purposes also. So a great one. Thank you, Praveen. I benefited a lot from your earlier talk, and from this talk, a lot of students will be benefited. If you see the comment section, Praveen, there are certain questions students have been asking. So can you have a look at it, or should I read it out to you?
If you read it out, it'll be better.
Okay, so Sai Vamshi has asked, you asked to list the things you are good at, but students don't know what they are good at academically. So this
Yeah.
students, I'm good at PUBG, which is a game, which is a video
Yeah.
game or something. How to find your own expertise?
Very good question. Okay, so there are two parts to it. One is, like I said, one need not be good at this stage because they are still progressing in their careers. They are building their careers and they may not be having a lot of clarity. So even if there are any things which are remotely they are interested in, which where they are good at, maybe they can start from there. For example, as an extreme case, if somebody is good at gaming so much, maybe he might explore the possibilities of coding, right? Or anything related to do with gaming. In fact, let me share my own experience with my son. So my son, one thing I told my son early on, right now he is 12 years old. When he was 8 or 9, then itself he wanted to get into gaming, etc., primarily PS4. So I told him a couple of things. One is he can, whatever he does, he has to do with obsession. Now hear me out very clearly. What I'm saying is extremely contradictory, and a lot of you people might actually reflect on what I'm going to say. I advised him to play with obsession, not for 1 hour or half an hour in a day, but whenever he plays, I told him to play a lot, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, so that he will become good at that gaming. So when you encourage kids to pursue their obsessions, what they'll do is they'll go beyond the obsession and they'll try to do a little more than that. So like I anticipated, my son became very obsessed about gaming and he played virtually all the games, mostly above his age. And after he got little excited about the gaming, he started on his own to get into coding. So at the age of 9, he made a small game of his own. I'm not an IT guy, so I don't understand coding, etc. So he looked up in his YouTube and started coding his own game. Now he's 12 and he started learning Python on his own to create some coding. So I'm not saying that everybody should follow this example, but if there is any particular obsession, you take a deep dive there and try to figure out what it leads to. And having said that, I also have put some non-negotiables with my son because at the tender age, while obsession is good, he also should get exposure with others, exposure to other things. So while I've encouraged him to be obsessed about gaming, I also have put some non-negotiables like reading and movies and books and some physical sports. So as professors, what we can do is encourage the students in obsession and guide them and nudge them to figure out something what they are good at. Anuradha, does that answer the question or?
Yes, Praveen, thank you so much. If I may add a little bit more to that, I was uh, talking about these questions to one of my colleagues who is Vishnu. And what we were thinking is students can figure out from what they do every day, say some activity that some event that they are doing very well, or probably they are able to sell things to friends very well, or they are very obsessed about share market. So there will be so many things that they can find out whether they are inclined towards finance or marketing, or maybe they are able to present very well, so which is business development. So they'll have to observe what they are able to do very enthusiastically when compared to others and learn quicker than others. So they'll have to keep observing something that they leap jump to take up as volunteer. If you are not paid, what you will do? That's an important
Absolutely.
question that you can ask.
Absolutely. So it boils down to those three circles. If you are doing PUBG, I'm just taking the same example because that was quoted. It's an extreme example. If you're doing only PUBG and if you don't have a game plan to make a career out of it, then you better keep that as a hobby and look at other options. But don't stop it just on the surface. If you're interested in gaming, no harm in it, but do it wholeheartedly and go deeper. Just don't stop at playing, but also look at creating the games. People should move from consuming content to creating content. That's when you create a lot of value for yourself. And Anuradha's example is bang on. So you may not be knowing consciously, but you might be actually doing some things a little subconsciously. It could be public speaking, it could be event management, it could be organizing, or it could be just probably investing in stock market, things like that. My only suggestion is be obsessed about it. Once you figure out what you want to do, be obsessed about it. Because if
The
you do
next
in moderation, people recommend, a lot of parents recommend moderation, and but the point is moderation may make you an average person. You might be good at a lot of things, but it will become a jack of all trades, right? So if you want to really build a strong career, I would recommend avoid moderation and at least be obsessed about one or two things in life.
Okay, so second question is a follow-up of this, Praveen. So somebody is asking, when we speak of passion, expertise, interest, and all these things, few of them aren't okay to get out of their comfort zone. So if you can advise on how why commitment is important and it impacts career and long run in industry, that's the question.
I guess the entire presentation is about that. If you are in comfort zone, then it's a big problem. Only when we push ourselves to the limits, we will know our true potential. What I can do to give, what I can give do to help you coming out of comfort zone is some tips. So l- let's take one example of feeling shy. Okay, and you're in a comfort zone, you don't want to speak in public, etc., etc. That is, you don't want to put yourself in a uncomfortable situations in public, right? So the opposite is comfort zone. You stay in your shell and you are happy with it. First of all, one has to do a little bit of introspecting, okay, and understand why this particular concern is there. Okay, let's say you had some bad experience in the past, or you were mocked at by somebody when you spoke in public, etc. So you question that and question the context in which you have faced that situation. So that's point number one. Point number two, if that is that is causing you discomfort in coming out of your comfort zone and speaking in public, you can do it in stages. First do it in closed. Yeah, so do it in a closed confinements. Do it to yourself, maybe do it in your room, and do it to in stage one. You do it yourself. Speak into the camera or speak into the mirror. Okay. And second thing is, and as a second step, you can actually expand your circle. Maybe do some speeches in your close circuits. People who will not humiliate you, or people will not make fun of you. Maybe your close friends, family members, etc., who you can trust. And as a third step, you can actually join some clubs. There are some avenues like Toastmasters, etc. Okay, where they train people in public speaking, and they train people in coming out of the comfort zone. So in step by step process, you can come out of your comfort zone, because comfort zone, people stay in comfort zone because primarily of the fear of the discomfort that would result in if you come out of comfort zone. Okay, and once you cross all these three stages, then probably you can actively seek opportunities in your college to uh, maximize exposure for yourself. Hello.
Okay, thank you, Praveen. The next question is, Ashish is asking this question. Let's say I have a passion that is inaccessible right now. So how do I show that I'm serious about my passion in my resume or CV?
Okay, if Ashish is listening to this, can he give an example so that we can be more specific in the response also? Or else I
Ashish, can you
can.
unmute and ask the question? Okay, all right, but it's still a good question. I think.
No, yeah, it's a very good question, and I keep facing this question a lot of times. In fact, a few weeks ago, one of our students' son, Subbu, right?
Okay,
He's
he's asking
yeah.
here. Praveen, he just mentioned, let's say, capital markets.
Okay, all right. So, Ashish, it's a very valid question. I'll give two examples. One is your own question about capital markets. So, the question is valid because since you haven't achieved expertise yet in that subject, it is difficult to convey your passion and your zeal for this to other people, to the prospective recruits or to prospective customers, etc. So you can figure out various tools to handle such a situation. The simplest is, first of all, I'm assuming that since you're passionate, you know the subject well and you read a lot and you continuously add to your skills. I'm assuming that you watch CNBC a lot and other news channels a lot, and also I'm assuming that you do some mock trading, right? So assuming all these things are done, how do you communicate your passion to outside? So there were some simple methods. I'm giving some examples, probably you can look at more. One is you can actually have your own website and post some views, perspectives, techniques, tools, etc. Because nowadays creating your own website is the easiest thing. Otherwise you post blogs, or if you have any social media handle, you can actually post your views there. Most importantly, you need to generate content about your area of expertise, right? And when you start generating the content, it does two things. One is you will also learn a lot. You will question some of your existing learning. And once you generate content and put it on paper, when you start writing down, it'll sharpen your skills. So once you generate content, you post it in various handles. Like it could be LinkedIn if you have a LinkedIn profile. Okay, first of all, you'll have to create these profiles, all the relevant profiles. For capital markets, a subject like capital markets, I think LinkedIn is a very good platform, right? So step one, you generate content and post it on LinkedIn and share it with people who you want to see the content. Okay, and then look at other avenues to exhibit your skills. Ashish, does this make sense to you, or you have any other questions on this?
Okay, one last question. One last question, Praveen.
Yeah.
Somebody is here. Ashish typed pretty clear. Thank you, sir. One last question from Kamala. She's saying, what if a person is expert in some area and enjoyable too, but the value is very little? So what steps we should take to improve it economically?
Yeah. So I think I've addressed this partly during the session itself, but like I said, if economic return is, if you after you have explored all the avenues, after you have tried all the avenues wholeheartedly, if the outcome still is what you're saying, that the economic return is very low, then it's better to have that as a hobby and probably await opportunities to increase the economic return. But in my experience, I think if you really look out, there will be opportunities to create your economic return. So like I said, I've taken two extreme examples. One is fishing. Even in things like fishing, uh, if you really become an expert and then you start taking coaching classes or writing blogs or maybe making videos or making content for the channels like National Geography, etc., you'll create a lot of economic return. So there are very few things in life where if you're passionate and if you're really an expert in that area, you cannot create economic return. There are very few things like that, whether it is gaming or whether it is fishing or whether it is abstract areas like traveling. Okay, if you really become an expert, you will eventually create economic return. And most of us would have watched this movie called Three Idiots, right? So in fact, it sums up this very well. The story of Madhavan in that, he was extremely good at photography. He was very passionate about it. but his father was discouraging him from pursuing it because he didn't believe in economic return. And I don't have to narrate the story to all of you. You have seen what happens in the end. He becomes a successful photographer in National Geographic, right? So if you're not making economic return at this stage, but you need to have some economic return, what you can do is you can pursue a career. We can pursue a standard or normal career too, which gives you basic salary, and you can survive on that while building skills in the area of your expertise and passion. So Anuradha, recently one of our students, EMC, Executive MBA course student, Subbu is there, right? His son approached me and he had 1 hour session. So he asked me the same question exactly. He said he's extremely good at, I mean, he's extremely passionate about traveling, right? So how do he create economic return out of it? So first of all, I told him the same thing what I told Ashish. It is not enough if you're passionate about. You need to deliberately accumulate a lot of skills, build skills and expertise in that area. So you should know all about traveling, at least theoretically, okay? But it will not give you immediate economic return. So you can continue to do blogs, Instagram posts, pictures, LinkedIn posts, etc. And you can have one small career till the time you find your economic return. And I also guided him, advised him to join companies which will actually fuel his passion. So I advised him to join maybe a Make My Trip or Go Ibibo or any of this, or Airbnb, any of these kind of companies, so that directionally he would be moving towards his passion. So same advice holds true for Ashish also. So while he may not get a good break or high salary in the companies which deal in capital markets, purely from the learning perspective and accumulating the skills perspective, he can take up those kind of career options. I hope it's clear.
A personal question to you from Ashish. He is asking, why did you choose to start off as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so the answer is again simple. I believe some 10-20 years ago, uh, I had this dream of creating some business. I didn't have too many passions. I didn't have any passion actually. So I realized over a period of time that I think I am pretty good at understanding business. And I did my MBA. So that belief got little reinforced. I was into brand management initially, but then my urge for starting my own business has gone up. Slowly, steadily, I realized that I might be good at it. So I started picking up more and more skills in that. So in my first innings started when I was 27, I think. So my fundamental reason for starting business is because I believe that as against doing a job, if I do my own business, I'll add a lot of value, much more value than what I would create as an employee. So value to myself, value for the society, for the country, not in terms of charity, but in commercial terms. As an entrepreneur, I'll be able to generate a lot of employment, for example. If the business does well, I'll be paying a lot of taxes to the government. So from these points of view, I've chosen this. Now, for whatever reasons, my first innings didn't do well, but it has actually done very good for my career. So after my entrepreneurship stint, my value in the employment market has gone up. So since the recruiters realize that I'm a well-rounded person and I have my hands-on entrepreneurship experience, I used to get jobs like entrepreneurship even in large companies. Now, as my last assignment was with SR Group. Everybody knows SR, I believe, SR Steel, SR Oil, etc. It's a large conglomerate. Even before they sold off oil business, it used to be about $50-60 billion company. So while I joined this group, I was handling a startup kind of business in this group as a CEO. Now, a corollary to this question is how did I build the skills and what do I do to continuously build the skills? So this is what I said in the beginning of this session. So I think I'm pretty decent in business management, and at the same time I realized that I need to continuously build my skills to stay relevant and to keep to become closer to expert in this field. So I've also taken up teaching of business management, that too to executive MBAs. So I'm in the business of business management, and I teach business strategy and marketing strategy, and both of them have fair amount of economic return. So you can understand how integrated all the three circles are. So when I do what I do in business management, that I teach to the students, and what I learn from the students, sometimes I apply in what I do. So it's a very integrated framework for me. I hope that answers the question.
One last question, and that's the last question we'll be taking now because it's almost 11:20. So the question is, I'm good at machine learning, Salesforce. Many students are learning these things. We do not know what the industry is expecting. Okay, so Pawan, I'll allow Praveen to say a few words about this, but there will be more sessions coming in, especially in machine learning and Salesforce from Blackbuck. I'll keep you posted in the group. Are you in the group, Pawan? Are you in AGBS group? Can you type yes or no? So Pawan Paul, there will be more sessions related to both machine learning and Salesforce, and experts from those areas will be speaking on that. Okay. So I'll also ask Praveen to say 2 words about his question.
Yeah. So like I said, I deal with IT people as a part of my team, but I'm not an expert in IT. So I'll not comment on the technicalities of this, but from career point of view, you got to be expert. If you are like anybody else, then you will also have limited opportunities. So be obsessed about these fields. And one advice I would like to give is to understand the underlying frameworks and not just the subject. For example, talking about AI, artificial intelligence, uh, understand the applications of that. And let me take one example. So let's say uh, application of AI in consumer experience. Okay. Application of AI in enhancing consumer experience. So Amazon is applying AI tools to enhance the experience of their consumers. So that is one application. So typically all the students will understand what are the tools used for uh, this kind of uh, this kind of subject. So how do we enhance, what are the tools to be used to enhance customer experience for an e-commerce company. So if you want to really become expert in this area, don't stop there. You go and study what is customer behavior, what is consumer behavior, how do consumers make their decisions, what is the customer's path to purchase, meaning from the time he decides to buy something, what are the various stages he goes through, and ultimately how he buys and what he does after buying. So in marketing terms, it is called customer decision journey. Don't worry about the jargon here, but the point I'm trying to say is, if you want to really become a master, don't study it like anybody else. That should be your basic requirement. You should be as good as anybody else on the subject, but you should also become good at the background and the context of the subjects, the underlying frameworks of the subject. Rest of it, I think, like Anuradha said, you'll have a lot of sessions on AI, ML, and DL. So I'm sure you'll be learning a lot from those. But one fundamental thing I want to say, Anuradha, to everybody is I use this. You must have noticed I use a lot of acronyms. The reason why I use acronyms is because if you have some themes in life, then the probability of practicing or inculcating a habit will be high. Like now, I'm sure after this, most people will not forget what is quadrant 2, what is TVC, and what is NIJ. So let me also throw one more acronym as my parting note. This is a suggestion to all the students. Increase your APPLE ratio. I'll explain what it is. APPLE stands for APPLE, the typical spelling, the normal spelling of apple. But APPLE ratio means application to learning. So all of us learn, and some of us apply. So for successful careers, people who apply more are the ones who are going to learn more, and the learning is going to stay very, very long. So APPLE ratio stands for application in the numerator and learning in the denominator. Increase the total ratio, and don't increase by reducing the denominator. That is the wrong thing to do. So to increase the ratio, either you can reduce the denominator, that is reduce the learning. That is not the way to increase the ratio. So increase the amount of application of what you learn. From today onwards, try to apply whatever you learn or try to relate to whatever you learn. Like for example, if you're learning machine learning or artificial intelligence, and then you do some buying on e-commerce on Big Basket or Amazon, or you're watching Netflix, you try to figure out how artificial intelligence is coming into play or what artificial intelligence can do. So people who are watching Netflix, okay, regularly must have noticed that Netflix from time to time curates the recommendations and suggests recommendations to you based on your watching history. That is artificial intelligence at play, right? So remember this ratio, Apple ratio, application to learning. Whatever you apply from today onwards, figure out avenues, figure out ways to apply that learning. And remember this ratio, Apple ratio. Question yourself, if you read a book, how much you can apply in your life if you like the book. If you're learning something at college or through sessions like this, how much you apply. In fact, this session also, try and apply whatever you have learned. It is very simple, very easy. It takes a little bit of effort, but the results will be very, very enormous. So on that note, we'll take a leave. Anuradha, over to you.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you all for attending the session. The peak number of people who have attended is 120, and I'm sure everybody would have carried back valuable information to work on back on their careers and life. So, so most of you must be from AGBS. Rest of the people, if you and your friends want to attend this series of talks, the series of talks will be around 20 in April and May. So around 20 talks will be there, all of high impact and high value to students. So if you want to attend these, apart from AGBS students have a group already, so don't worry about it. Apart from AGBS students, if you want to attend this session, I am pasting a link in the comment section. So you can join the WhatsApp group using that link I've just posted. Using that link, you can join that WhatsApp group and you will get information about what will be the next talk and how you'll benefit using that. Okay. Thank you so much for attending. Have a great day and a great week ahead. Thank you, Praveen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The session will be ending now. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.